Given the numerous gacha games that I've discussed on this channel, today I want to take time out of my day and talk about meta, and more specifically discuss how it can dramatically impact and change both a new player's experience and the overall play style of a game. Primarily, I will be focusing on Genshin Impact, Arknights, and Blue Archive, as these are the games that I personally play the most and am the most knowledgeable regarding. If you happen to enjoy this video, consider subscribing or heading to the Discord server. It will be linked down below in the description as well as the comment section. And without further ado, let's continue. When discussing concepts regarding meta, you're oftentimes left with a couple of responses. Either you have individuals who appreciate the meta and actively go for extremely good, extremely high value characters and only do that, or you're left with people who just pull for waifu or husbando over meta. Both are valid options. It's depending on what you play. I personally go for waifu over meta. It's just a lot of times people who I personally like and enjoy happen to be meta. However, in that same vein, if you're a new player, you really don't have any opinion regarding the meta because you obviously don't necessarily have the experience or the knowledge regarding certain units, so what you prefer both in terms of personality and gameplay style and overall experience. By this I mean you could summon for an extremely powerful unit, but not know how to use them, not know in which situations they're the best, and not know why they're valuable. And hypothetically, if you're a new player and let's say you're starting out Arknights and you really just want to go for characters that you think are cute, but you also don't want to waste your early game currency for stuff like pulls. You don't want to pull for an awful unit who you're never going to use, so you ask for advice. People can tell you and give you a rundown of characters saying, hey, this unit is good in these specific stages, they can do this, and the best skill is this one. And generally, that's what I like about the Arknights community. Instead of saying don't pull for a unit, they're instead much more inclined to tell you, hey, this is what this unit can do, and this is where they're good in. So in regards to the concept of meta, sure, Arknights has some extremely powerful units, but it is much less impactful to the overall experience of a new player, specifically because of how the community works regarding every character. And Arknights community is so vast that you're very inclined to find a guide or an opinion or multiple videos of one specific unit. With that being said, moving on. If you were going to summon for units, or let's say hypothetically you got a couple units and you really want to know if they were good, yes, you do have individuals who are going to highly recommend certain characters like Surtur, or you have people who are going to recommend characters like Lapland for extremely easy and extremely quick combat early game. You have individuals who may recommend you pull a Silver Ash, or even a Thorns, because early game they're extremely powerful, and late game once you actually build them up they're great as well. You have Ifrit, and you have Spectre as well. There's a variety of different units. I'm not going to go over all of them, but there are a variety of different units that are really good and the ones that are especially good in certain stages. And even though that does affect a lot of new players' experience, I don't think the Arknights community as a whole is very pushy or very keen on pressuring individuals towards pulling a specific unit. I think, in my opinion, if you want a game that has a vast amount of characters and difficult content, but also has a good community, I'd recommend Arknights, simply because, in my personal opinion, Arknights is the best game or the best community regarding things like meta and waifu over meta. They're giving you and are more inclined to give you the rundowns on strengths and weaknesses as opposed to pressuring you towards and funneling you into one specific playstyle with one specific character or a small subset of characters. In regards to Blue Archive, well, you do have characters who are really good at very niche scenarios, or characters who are evaluated based on, okay, well, how much does their EX cost? Or are they a striker or are they a specialist? Essentially, are they on field or off field? And yeah, you do have ones who are extremely viable in early game stages, or ones who are extremely viable in PvE or PvP. But a lot of the individual players don't choose to focus too heavily on PvP, so a lot of the characters are geared much more towards PvE. And in PvE, you have a vast amount of units that are really good at mostly everything. It's only towards later game or even event stages in which you're really locked off certain characters due to resistant types. And so when it comes down to meta pulls, yeah, you have characters, but in my experience as an individual who's played Blue Archive for an extremely long time and has kind of been with this game since launch, I don't think the community is very pushy towards it, because at most you hear, yeah, this character is really good to have. They're like extremely great, and then that's it. Like the discussion kind of ends at that point because no one really cares. I think Blue Archive is the most waifu over meta game just because of how it's advertised and how the gameplay style is. And that is great in my opinion. I don't think for the vast majority of gacha games, meta is so heavily impactful that it ruins the experience, but I do think it's important to consider just how heavy meta can impact a certain player's experience. If you're looking at the Genshin Impact, well, despite how large the community is, there's pretty often fights between how good a character is. And in Genshin Impact, in my experience, one of the worst things you'll have is either a character's great as a Ganyu or Ayaka or even a Raiden tier, or they're awful. And there's less of an in-between. Instead, that in-between will be figured out once they get their second rerun or the next rerun. Essentially, if a character first drops and they're not amazing or introducing a brand new element or new style, Tignari, for instance, is a great character, but he's also one of the good elements. He's a brand new element. So people are less inclined to say, oh yeah, he's trash because of that. But if you're looking at someone like Yoimiya or somebody like Kokomi, people are much more inclined to say, yeah, this character's awful, do not ever summon for them because there are just less valuable pulls or more valuable pulls in comparison to them. And I think in that sense, it really downplays the strengths of a lot of units, and it really makes it hard for a new player to get into the game and decide who they want, because you could want a waifu character. You want a character who you really like the appearance of and really like the personality of or the way they're featured in the story quest, but if you constantly hear they're trash, don't summon for them, they're worst, they're awful, they are not the character you want, instead go with this character, then it dramatically shifts your enjoyment of the game. If you started out Genshin Impact and all you heard for half a year or for an entire year is that you should wait for Kazuha, and you skipped every single character because you were expecting him to come back, that dramatically impacts your enjoyment of the game, because maybe you didn't get the unit that you thought was really cute. Or maybe you didn't get the unit whose playstyle you would have enjoyed because you were waiting around for this one top tier meta pick and skipped everyone else. I think meta has its place in every game. I think whether it's gear, whether it's characters, whether it's playstyle, whatever, optimal combos, I think meta is extremely important, because a game can oftentimes be shaped by what is the most valuable, what is the highest tiered content available, what is the higher tier units available. And that is fine. In my opinion, if there is a really strong character or really strong subset of characters and there's still variety amongst them, that meta doesn't necessarily change and funnel every player into one specific playstyle. But if that meta is based around, okay, yeah, the top tier unit or the best unit right now is whatever banner character is released, then that changes things to a point where if you're a new player or if you're an even old player who maybe doesn't want newer units, you are funneled or instead having a much worse time than other people who alternatively pulled for the newest units or pulled for a specific subset. Like I said before, Arknights has difficult content, but nothing is difficult to the extent to where it requires you to have a new character, to the point where it requires you to have one character. There's plenty of guides where individuals clear content using lower rarity units, and that is perfectly fine. I think that's a great example of difficulty done right, because it's difficult content, but that difficult content can be circumvented by your own knowledge of the game mechanics and enemies, or by the enough investment in units. It's not just a solid DPS check, can you deal enough damage? It's a lot more of a skill check. Do you know what you're doing? Do you know how to position these? Do you know how to deal with these enemies? And that is the proper way to orient damage. Damage checks are fine. Can you clear the content with the current units you have by dealing enough damage? That is fine. But when a game tests your knowledge and your ability to work with its mechanics, to work with its enemies, that is a much better way, because it really rewards you for learning. It rewards you for the patience and effort you put into learning the game's mechanics, learning the enemy variety, learning their attack styles, and learning how to position your units. But I want to hear your opinions. How has meta ruined or impacted your gaming experience? My name is Shika. If you've enjoyed, leave a like on the video, consider subscribing, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.